Pressure is mounting on embattled Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to resign. His deputy and his finance minister and one of his longest-serving colleagues in the cabinet, Chrystia Freeland, resigned in a surprise move that happened last night. She cited differences with Prime Minister Trudeau, particularly on the economic measures to be taken ahead of the inauguration of new US President Donald Trump. The Canadian Prime Minister is now barely clinging on to power, as over a third of the ruling Liberal Party MPs have openly called for a change in leadership. They've openly called for Mr. Trudeau to step down. Allies are also calling for a change in the leadership amid a looming threat from new US President-elect Donald Trump, who's expected to impose a steep 25% tariff on all imports from Canada unless the border issue is fixed and unless the drug problem, which he claims there is a outpouring of fentanyl coming in from Canada as well as Mexico into the United States. Trump wants that fixed, and unless it is fixed, he's threatening to impose straight up 25% tariffs on both Canada and on Mexico. Now, here's why Trudeau's deputy and one of his most trusted and long-serving colleagues resigned in such a dramatic fashion last night. Number one, like I said, all of this is in response to Trump's threat of 25% tariff on Canadian goods. In fact, Trudeau had gone to Mar-a-Lago and met with Trump and begged him not to impose this steep tariff of 25%. Of course, Trump has not made any concessions or not said that he is willing to reconsider. Also, economists say that such a move, a 25% tariff on any Canadian export into the United States, would completely be detrimental and derail the Canadian economy at a time when inflation is going through the roof, housing prices are really skyrocketing, and ordinary Canadians are finding it difficult to put food on the table 3 times a day. There are also differences between Freeland and Trudeau over how to deal with these steep tariffs that Trump proposes to impose. The Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, in fact, wanted Trudeau to stop many of these popular SOPs. And yesterday, there was the budget equivalent, an accounting statement that she was supposed to present, in which Mr. Trudeau wanted an additional 20 billion Canadian dollars of new spending. That would mean that the federal deficit would go upwards of $60 billion, which would be at least $20 billion more than the $41.3 billion that Chrystia Freeland had promised as finance minister. Chrystia Freeland, in fact, said that Trudeau should stop all these costly political gimmicks. She said that Canadians know when we are batting for them and when we are batting for ourselves. Trudeau's SOPs had hiked Canada's deficit, like I said, to $42 billion already, which is the highest that Canada has seen in years. And if we were to impose another $20 billion of extra government spending, then it would take it upwards of $60 billion. Trudeau did not want Freeland as the top economic advisor. In fact, he did not take Chrystia Freeland to Mar-a-Lago when he visited there a few days ago in a desperate bid to plead and beg Donald Trump, the new US president-elect, from not imposing this 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Also, Chrystia Freeland resigned, citing differences with Trudeau, saying that his economic outlook for Canada is not something that she shares. She could also be politically signaling to the rest of the Liberal Party, particularly to Liberal MPs, that she does not want her record and her political career, as it were, at least whatever is left of it, to be tied in the hip with that of Trudeau. Trudeau, of course, is extremely unpopular in Canada right now. Canada will be going to polls in about a year's time. By October of 2025 is when Trudeau officially has time till he calls the next election. He is, of course, facing multiple backlashes. He is 20 points behind in all the opinion polls that are doing the rounds in Canada, 20 points behind the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. There is a massive economic crisis, a cost of living crisis, a housing crisis, and in the midst of all of this, of course, there's also the immigration crisis, all of which is adding huge burden on the country's tax-paying middle class. Also, he faces dissent from within his own party to try and counter the tariff threat that Trump has put. So much so, like I said, he had gone to Mar-a-Lago begging and pleading with Trump not to make good his promise of putting these 25% tariffs. Also, audits show that Canada is desperately falling short of its 2030 climate targets, which of course was a pet issue for Justin Trudeau. Also, there is significantly slow progress when it comes to welfare, water issue, land rights when it comes to indigenous people. And like I said, immigration, almost unchecked, unrestricted immigration into Canada, and huge skyrocketing housing prices. These are seen as two huge red flags by the Canadian public, which has forced Trudeau to be almost 20 points behind in the elections. Of course, the big question is, will Trudeau read the writing on the wall and will he step down? He's due to make a big speech later tonight. Whether he will concede and whether he will step down, no politician voluntarily goes out, certainly doesn't go out without kicking and screaming. Let's see what ends up being Justin Trudeau's fate. But like I said, now a third of his supporters within the parliamentary constituency of his own Liberal Party have said that they do not support the Prime Minister.